Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vagan Radian here at the United States Army Corps of Engineers Operations Center in downtown Washington, D.C., where we're honored to have with us Major General Ed Jackson, veteran of Afghanistan and Iraq, who is the Deputy Commanding General for Civil Operations and
Emergency operations.
Emergency operations, excuse me, I screwed that up. And you're responsible for the vast infrastructure, whether it's dams, waterways, levees, pump facilities. You've got several hundred people who are assigned in Harvey recovery. But you guys are also gearing up for Irma and then Jose right after that. And Irma, absolutely record-setting storm at this point, 220 plus mile an hour gusts, a Category 5 hurricane. Talk to us a little bit about what most Americans understand what the Guard does. They understand what FEMA does. What's the key role the Army Corps of Engineers is playing in disaster preparedness, and what are you guys specifically doing on the ground?
Well, absolutely. First, I'd like to say thank you for coming and interviewing me today and getting the Corps side of the story. I can tell you right now, my heart really goes out to all the people who are impacted, both in Texas, and across the Caribbean and in Florida and the other states based upon where this Irma storm is going to go. And another shout out to all the first responders and all the folks at the states, the governors and all the emergency managers at every level have just been doing tremendous work stitching together a response option that the federal government is proud to be a part of. The Corps of Engineers, what we do is we work very closely with the states, and we work very closely as part of FEMA's team. We're a DoD asset, obviously, with the U.S. Army, but we deploy and prepare for storms like this as part of FEMA and in one of our emergency support functions for public works, public utilities, and engineering. And so what we're doing right now in Irma is we have technical experts that are deployed across all the command and control nodes all across FEMA Region 4 right now. We have some specialized teams on temporary power restoration. They're in the U.S. Virgin Islands right now. They're in Puerto Rico right now. We've got some experts in planning that are embedded in FEMA Region 2's forward headquarters, which is in Puerto Rico right now. And what we're doing is we are beginning to do some assessments there on the damages that Irma has left in its wake coming through the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. And we're gearing up for what we think is going to happen when the storm comes ashore in Florida. We've been asked by FEMA to do a number of things, which we do. We provide infrastructure assessment. We provide temporary roofing, temporary emergency power, and that's why these power teams are already out there. We help with debris assessment and removal operations. We also work with temporary housing. These are some of the functions that we do in support of our requirements as part of the FEMA team when we respond to disasters of this type.
And just one thing to tell Americans, it is one of the world's most incredible organizations since 1775. You guys are really one of the largest, if not engineering management, certainly one of the world's largest engineering organizations in the world. And every time you flip your light switch, 25% of the electrical power produced in the United States is coming from an Army Corps of Engineers facility. And I want to talk to you about a dam out west, actually, you guys are monitoring, which is very close to a forest fire. Getting back to Harvey, what are some of the things that you guys are doing there? How are your folks engaged? Massive disaster. It's going to take years to recover from. But after each one of these large incidents, you guys have been there. What are you doing for the folks in Texas and in Louisiana?
Well, absolutely. So I appreciate that's a great question. We're doing basically in two different categories. First, we're doing our support missions for FEMA. We have folks there working with the state of Texas to identify what the debris requirements are and helping them to develop plans that allow us to remove the debris and get people back in their homes. We're also involved with temporary housing, so we're working with the state to determine how are we going to go back in and assess the damages that have been done because of all the flooding and the wind damage, and what are the options that the state and the federal government can put together to help the people who've been removed from their homes because of the impacts of this storm. We've also done some other things with them in the state right now. What we're really focused in on is navigation restoration. We have survey vessels that are out in all the ports in the Gulf Intercoastal Waterway. We have dredges actively engaged to try to restore navigation and shipping to that very, very important part of our nation, where the petrochemical industry is hugely strategic for America. And we're also involved in managing water. We have two reservoirs that have been in the news a lot, Addicks and Barker reservoirs. We're continuing to reduce our releases there based upon our approved plans that we've worked with Harris County and the city of Houston, and we're drawing those levels down to try to make sure that we can prepare for any other event that could come, while at the same time allowing FEMA to be able to get into some of these houses and take a look at the damages so we can help the people of Houston and that region to move on.
Let me ask you a lessons learned question.
Okay.
You know, we have had a number of large weather events, I mean, throughout history, but certainly over the last 20 years, 25 years, you know, you could say Andrew was sort of a watershed. That was a Category 5, devastating. A great article in the New York Times talking about how everybody learned a lot of lessons from it. Katrina, a lot of very powerful lessons from that storm. What are the lessons that you've learned from all of these that helps you, but also the whole federal team on the defense side of things, on the state side of things, get better at the game of recovery and, more important, disaster prep?
I think the most important thing is to build the relationships before the storm hits. So we've been very closely aligned with the states, every state that we've been working with, whether it's Louisiana, whether it's Texas, whether it's Florida, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico. We work and build relationships with the critical leaders in those command and control operations. You know, months and months in advance. We do annual training exercises to build those relationships and develop our plans and procedures so that when the event happens, it's just a matter of facilitating the communication, executing the plans that we've already sort of rehearsed and worked together, understanding the roles of the state, understanding the roles of county judges and other smaller municipalities that have a lot of say in what goes on in Texas. And working with the state and with FEMA to make sure that what we provide is right. And then once the storm gets ready to hit, we are prepared to go big and to go fast to make sure that there's no unmet needs that any state or community might have from the federal government.